It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, back at the Hometown Commander. And we're back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the Magic World. Today we are finishing up our Murders at Karlov Manor precons, and I've had a lot of fun doing these. As with the other three we've released this week, my 10 card upgrade will be up at the same time this one is. If you're interested in just upgrading your precon a little bit, this is going to be more of a full upgrade where we're going to just have some fun, play with the commander, and use the precon cards if we can, rather than just upgrading some amount of cards. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description below. Today we're looking at Kaust, Eyes of the Glade. This is our disguise precon from utilizing the new disguise mechanic from the set, which is very similar to Morph and Megamorph and abilities like that. First, we'll read Kaust, and then we'll talk about what we're trying to do in the deck. Kaust says, whenever a creature we control that was turned face up this turn deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card, which is a great ability. Anything that lets you draw cards for you dealing damage to your opponents if you're playing enough creatures is a good thing. And then we can tap to turn target face down attacking creature we control face up. Now, that's kind of great for two reasons. One, because then it allows you to hit somebody potentially and use Kaust's first ability, right? So the cool part about that being a tap ability that's at instant speed is we get attacked with a couple of our face down creatures. If one isn't blocked, we could flip it up with Kaust to one, get its ability, and then two, hit for damage and draw a card. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players and some of the kind of cards you're going to see when we look at these morph / disguise decks. First, let's talk about Disguise. Disguise is the new mechanic in Murders at Karlov Manor, which works very similar to how Morph used to work. You can play this card for 3 mana as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2, and we can turn it up at any time for its Disguise cost. So the big difference, this versus the old Morphs, is we get a Ward 2 on top of the 2/2, whereas with a Morph, we only got a 2/2 for 3 mana. So the cool part here is we're adding the Ward 2 on top of it. Now, the other kind of similar mechanic that we get to do here with the new cards is Cloak. And Cloak's very similar to Cloak, a card we put on the battlefield face down as a 2/2 with Ward 2. We're just cloaking by another effect instead of paying that 3 mana like we did with the disguise ability. Now, those Morph and Megamorph exactly the same. You're paying 3 mana to put it down as a 2/2. With Megamorph, it comes face up with a +1/+1 counter on it. Whereas Morph, it just turns face up. But just like all of our Morph and Megamorph creatures, all of our disguise creatures have some sort of ability when they get turned up. And that's where a lot of them become really good, is because you get the option to turn them up at any time to have these abilities. It is a ability that you can do at instant speed, cannot be responded to, and that allows you to create yourself some scenarios where you can interact with certain things. I'm not going to go over every disguise, every morph, every megamorph creature in the deck. I'll just pick 2 or 3 so you can kind of understand why this ability could be good. Let's look at Bolt Bender here. When it's turned face up, you may choose new targets for any number of other spells or abilities. This is interesting because if someone creates a big stack of spells or abilities, flip Bolt Bender face up, and now you get to completely affect what's going on and how that's working. We'll take a look at Pyrotechnic Performer. It says whenever it or another creature you control is turned face up, that creature deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Well, cool. That's a fun ability, right? Allowing you to deal some damage out to other people and kind of spread that love around. And then you have something like Nervous Gardener. Whenever it's turned face up, search your library for a land card with a basic land type, reveal it, put it to your hand, and then shuffle. So whenever it comes up, we get a land with a basic land type, which can be a dual or a tri-land in Jetmir's Garden, and bring it into our hand. So there's plenty more of these abilities. There's some that deal damage, some that exile or destroy creatures. There's a wide range of effects, but the point is that these are creatures that are going to be 2/2s for 3 when they're face down, and at any time we can flip them face up to make a myriad of effects happen. So the big 2 things I want to focus on are how do we make Morph cheaper, and then we'll talk about those Cloak and Manifest. These are ways for us to get them down without paying the 3 mana. Well, one of the obvious ways that we can do it is just by making it cheaper to do. Obscuring Ether makes them cost 1 less to cast, going from 3 down to 2. We have a card called Panoptic Projector that we can tap 3 to make the next tap it and make the next face down spell we cast cost 3 less to cast, which is cool. And then Panoptic Projector is kind of fun because it's kind of a Parallelonomicon, because it says when turning a face down permanent face up, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger. It triggers an additional time. So it kind of becomes that doubling ability that can help all of our effects go off multiple times. We have cards like Hide in Plain Sight, which talk about cloaking. Look at the top 5, cloak 2 of them, and put the rest on the bottom. So this is cool because then we don't have to pay that 3 mana, but we would get our choice of things. Now, remember, you can cloak a card that isn't a creature. It would just be a 2/2, on the battlefield, and then, we wouldn't be able to flip it face up, which is pretty cool. Now, the other cool part is if we cloak a creature that isn't a morph, disguise, or megamorph creature, we can just flip it up anytime for its regular mana cost, which is cool because then if we hit some of our creatures that don't, that aren't disguised or whatever, we can still flip them up. So cloaking becomes a really good ability for us because we can do that. The other thing is manifesting. So we'll look at Temur War Shaman here. It says whenever it enters the battlefield, manifest the top card of your library. So we put that card on the battlefield face down as a 2/2. And we can turn it up anytime for its mana cost as long as it's a creature, if it's a creature card. So again, we're getting that initial investment in for free, and the good part is if they're creatures, we can flip them up anytime. The only bad part is if they're not creatures, then they're stuck as 2/2s. But we're going to try to offset this in a second by buffing our creatures even when they're face down. Scroll of Fate just lets us manifest a card from our hand, which is really cool because then we get to pick what we want to manifest, and that's great because then we can either manifest one of those creatures we care about or just get one of our creatures on the battlefield for the turn. And we also have something like Ugin the Ineffable, which makes all of our colorless spells cost 2 less to cast, but it says exile the top card of our library face down, look at it, it's 2/2 spirit. And we could then flip it up if we wanted to for its cost. And then when it dies, whenever it leaves the battlefield, it comes back to our hand, that 2/2, we can't flip it. Whenever it dies, it comes back to our hand, but it can still get that into play as a 2/2 for our various effects. So let's talk about how we're going to take advantage of those 2/2s being there, right? We have a bunch of these 2/2s potentially sitting on the battlefield. Well, how do we take advantage of them? Well, I think one of the easiest ways to do it is by making them harder to deal with. First off, we have Descana, which says whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature with base power and toughness 2/2 you control. Well, all of these cards we're putting face down are going to have that, so we can potentially draw a bunch of cards. But it says whenever a creature we control with base power and toughness 2/2 attacks, it gets +3/+3 on turn. So those 2/2s immediately become 5/5s, which is, again, harder for our opponents to deal with. Playing Jasmine Boreal of the 7, which came out in those Dominaria cards. Tap for 2 mana to only cast creature spells with no abilities, so we can use that to put our creatures face down. And then when creatures you control with no abilities can't be blocked by creatures with abilities, so those 2/2s that are face down, not the disguise ones, because those will have ward 2, but the other ones will be able to basically be unblockable. Same thing, very similar with Ruxa. Ruxa gives all creatures with no abilities +1/+1, and we can assign counter damage as though they weren't blocked. So this is going to help us get those 2/2s in for good damage, as we're hopefully pushing ourselves towards the mid to late game and trying to find a way to hit our opponents. We have a couple other creatures that are just generally good or care about these face down creatures. The first is Yaris, Roar of the Old Gods. This is on the main set. It says other creatures we control have haste, and whenever one or more face down creatures deal damage to a player, we draw a card. But its third ability says whenever a face down creature we control dies, we return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control if it's permanent, and then turn it face up. And this is really cool because then we have absolutely no fear attacking those 2/2s into anything, because they're just going to come back, and they're going to flip up for free when they come back, and then we get to take good advantage of them. And the other card is Eudora, Grave Gardener. Got the reprint in the deck. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, we can return it from the battlefield face down under its owner's control as a forest. So, hey, if one of those creatures dies and we don't really need its abilities at the moment, we can bring it back as a forest. Or if we have a 2/2 manifested card that was face down, I believe we can return that back as a forest as well. So we can take advantage of some of these things that we have going on and use them to our advantage. I wish I could do more than that. Some decks we talk about exactly what our win cons are, and that for in all reality here, we're just trying to make our creatures hard to deal with. Or in Frostfang and Seraph can give our creatures death touch when they're attacking, making it harder to block. And we're just going to genuinely try to get into combat, get some advantage, and really push it through for the win. Another fun interaction I like is that if you have Vivian out, we can disguise or morph our creatures at instant speed with having flash, and allowing us to take advantage of some of the reductions on everyone's turn. But let's get into our play test and just kind of see how we're going to do this thing. Opening 7, we got a 3-lander, Nature's Lore for a little bit of ramp. Ruxa and Mirror Entity are both pretty fun cards. We draw turn 1 and we see our other 2-mana ramp spell and 3 visits. I like getting the Canopy Vista down here because then we can either Nature's Lore or 3 visits next turn. We'll catch a Rockfall Veil, so that's great. We get access to red. I will go ahead and use the Nature's Lore here. And we did actually add Jetmir's Garden in. The Precon didn't come with it, but we have no reason not to, because then it just allows us with both of these 2-mana green spells that look for forests in the deck. We want to add Jetmir's Garden in because then it allows us to go look for it. I think I just missed it on the list. There it is. That comes in tapped. Now we are at 4 mana here. On turn 3, we can play our commander. We can spin the wheel again on 3 visits. We could get Ruxa down. The commander would be a idea. The only problem with getting the commander down is that we have nothing to take advantage of its ability, and I'd rather not. That's right, it's 2 mana. So I think I like the idea of 3 visits and our commander here. Go for the 3 visits. Let's see. We have a green. We have Canopy Vista, so I guess maybe Cinder Glade here. Take advantage of getting a land that's multiple colors instead of just getting that. So we're up to 5 mana here. This turn, I'd say we can get that 6th land down. We can morph the Enoch Survivalist, and I guess we could play the Mirror Entity, just get ourselves some creatures on board. We could also keep this Chaos Warp up. But I think I just like getting the Entity down. Of course, we can't flip that Enoch Survivalist up this turn with Kaust. We could, but of course it's not attacking, so it's not going to get that effect benefit. I think I would just call a turn here and move into the next turn. Get the Clifftop Retreat down. Now there's an argument. We could get Toski down here and draw 2 cards for hitting somebody, which makes a ton of sense. Or we could get Ruxa down here for the buff. If we play Ruska, no matter whether we play Ruska or Toski, we can get the Chaos Warp. So I kind of like Toski here, just as a way to draw some cards. And I would pick this more if it's somebody who potentially doesn't have creatures. Now, if everybody has creatures, I would point this 2/2 at someone who has the cheapest creature, and now they have to decide, can I flip this into something better, or what have you. We do also have the ability to make it a 3/3 now with Mirror Entity, because we have 3 mana. And so if they block it, and Enoch is going to die, I just pay the 3 mana into the entity and hopefully take their thing out. If they don't block it, we tap Kaust to flip this face up. Its ability will trigger, and then we'll actually draw 2, and we'll do that for the purposes of this. We'll draw 2 because of Toski and Kaust, and then we get to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Somebody's probably going to have a mana rock out, and now we've benefited here at this point. And it comes up with a +1/+1 counter, so we'll deal the extra damage. We'll go one more turn, Exotic Orchard down here. And like I said, we would have had that 3 mana up, so we could have had the Chaos Warp if need be. We've got another creature we can put face down. We've got Ruxa, which can buff up our face down creatures. I'd probably get this creature in face down, 5 mana. I mean, Ruxa, the only thing it would be benefiting is this card that's face down. But this turn, Toski has to attack. We don't have a choice. The cool part here is we still have 5 mana up, meaning with Mirror Entity, we could take a big attack here, attacking everybody, and then paying 5 mana to make everybody into a 5/5 if we get blocked. I think that's what I would do. Hold the 5 mana up, risk, have them try to decide, are you going to block me with the Mirror Entity having 5 mana free up, meaning I can just pay 5 mana and make all of them 5/5s, and I would just attack. We're not going to draw off of Kaust, but we will draw off of Toski. Anybody who hits someone is going to get a card with 1/1 that's unblockable or indestructible and 3 other creatures. I mean, I would imagine we get 1 or 2 things in, right? I mean, especially if somebody doesn't have any blockers or if somebody is lacking. Otherwise, we just immediately turn them into 5/5s and probably just hurt people in combat because they weren't expecting us to turn our 1/1 into a 5/5 with Mirror Entity. And then now we've drawn a couple extra cards. We can flip Gardener up next turn in combat to to draw cards. And again, we have the same trick with Mirror Entity now, where we can just turn all of our creatures into, you know, let's say we put this down the next turn, we still have 5 mana up. Same thing. Now we have 5/5s that our opponent's at risk of having to try to block. And we create this ability where unless they wipe the board, our opponents are now in trouble. We also drew Fell the Mighty, a really fun card that we destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. Well, let's say next turn we just pick the Survivalist, destroy every creature with power 2 or greater, and now when we go into combat, you know, we know that our creatures are in good shape, or, you know, some of these creatures aren't just going to get hated out of combat with bigger creatures. Again, this is the pivot point where you could start to decide, am I going to get really aggressive, or am I going to keep trying to load the board? But let me know, what do you guys think of Kaust or the... which one was this one? I can't remember the name of this precon, but I think it's interesting. Naya Morph Disguise is interesting. I think you're going to see a lot more people playing Kadena, which is coming on the channel next week. I'm gonna brew that one with all the new disguise cards and all the new support. So if you have a Kadena deck, it's coming. Be ready. That deck is going to be a ton of fun to brew. I've had a chance of playing against a couple of them as of late, so I'm excited to brew that one. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys next time.